Donkey Kong Country was released for the SNES in 1994. It was the first we'd seen of Donkey Kong since the arcade days, and it was good to see DK make a return following the new super iterations of characters like Mario, Link, Samus, and Simon, who had all made the transition from 8-bit to 16-bit. All of these new games perfectly lived up to the expectations of their predecessors, if not surpassing them. And was Donkey Kong any exception? Nope. In fact, Donkey Kong went from one of the most beloved characters in gaming to a legend. And the evidence is right here in Donkey Kong Country. But what exactly is it about Donkey Kong Country that makes it so great? Well, I'm going to explain all that in this video. Here's my Donkey Kong Country review. Like I mentioned earlier, this game was released in the mid-90s on the famous Super Nintendo. It had probably some of the best graphics gaming had ever seen, and used every bit of the SNES's software, pushing the console's limitations to create one of the most advanced gaming experiences of the decade. Nearly every aspect of this game is perfect. Controls, graphics, music, characters, it's all there. So I'm going to break it down into 10 parts. The 10 things I think really make a game. Controls, music, graphics, bosses, overall gameplay, characters, backstory, plot, overall story, and how the story ties together with the gameplay. I'm going to cover each section individually. Donkey Kong's controls were revolutionary, and this is because he isn't like most of Nintendo's popular gaming icons at the time. He's a massive quarter-ton ape, so naturally he can't control as the same as Mario, the 5-foot Italian plumber, or any of the other popular characters. Donkey Kong's main attacks are basically just beating the ever-living shit out of all the forest animals he comes across. And I know what you're probably thinking. Donkey Kong's not the only playable character here. To which I would respond, thanks for the segue into talking about Diddy Kong, the deuteragonist of the game. Definitely knew that word beforehand. Diddy Kong is Donkey Kong's nephew, who, unlike his uncle, is a small monkey who can hop around really quickly. An innovative feature of this game is that you can actually switch between playing as Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong, depending on who the level calls for. I'm not going to talk too much about their actual character traits until later, but the dynamic between Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong is very memorable and helps the player to feel more invested in the game. Overall, the main things you can do in the controls are jump, roll, and switch between characters. But you get the ability to interact with parts of the level, such as barrels, which you can throw, vines, which you can swing from, and the many enemies you have to deal with. The game functions as a world map type game like Mario, with 40 levels across 7 worlds. The game gradually gets harder as the game goes on, and some of the levels are really creative. Donkey Kong goes through a jungle, mines, a forest, a glacier, an industrial area, a cavern, and finally a pirate ship where you fight the final boss. The controls and mechanics of Donkey Kong Country are really original and feel distinct from other video games, especially in these early games, whereas it feels like the two more recent Donkey Kong Country games were sort of Mario-ized. And that's not to say that either of these games, those being Tropical Freeze and Donkey Kong Country Returns, are bad in any way, and in a lot of ways they are better than these early games, but certain aspects of the first game are lost and replaced with mechanics more similar to that of the coinciding Mario Bros. Installments of each release, such as the traditional 8-world, collect a bunch of shit, special level unlocking style of Mario that is present in the Returns games. Overall, I really enjoy how unique DKC is control-wise, and there's just no game like it. There's usually not much to say about the graphics of video games other than whether they're good or bad, and how they compare to other games at the time, but with Donkey Kong Country, the graphics look really different than most other Super Nintendo games. Despite being a side-scroller, it looks very 3D, and the reason for this is that it was one of the first home console games to feature pre-rendered graphics, achieved through a compression technique that allowed Rare to convert 3D models into SNES sprites without losing detail. This is totally not stolen from Wikipedia. DKC's incredible graphics only go to show just how much time and effort the developers spent on the game. I don't think it's any secret that the music in this game is fucking phenomenal. Like the graphics, it's clear that a lot of effort was put into the game's soundtrack by the composers, David Wise and Evelyn Fisher. Every single song on the OST is a banger. Jungle Hijinks, Life in the Mines, Forest Frenzy, Ice Cave Chant, Candy's Love Song, fucking Aquatic Ambience, and of course Gangplank Galleon, the game's climactic final boss theme. All of these songs I would listen to anytime. Solid 10 out of 10 OST. The one category where DKC falls flat is bosses. The game has 7 bosses, which is a sufficient number, but literally 86% of these bosses are ass. The first boss is easy, which makes sense since it's only the first boss, but let me tell you just how easy this motherfucker is. He's called Very Naughty, and he's a beaver. He's so incredibly easy that I was able to beat him playing on computer with my left key broken. And I wasn't even a little bit scared that I would take one hit during the entire fight. And I shit you not, they repeat this boss later too in Gorilla Glacier, because everyone knows beavers live in fucking glaciers. He's only slightly harder, but still insultingly easy. The second boss is a vulture called Neki, who later also gets repeated. He throws nuts at Donkey Kong, and he's basically impossible to get hit by. The third boss is a wasp, which basically functions the same as Very Naughty, but it sort of acts as a homing missile and can only be hit by a barrel. But 3 of those, and it's on to the next world. And then we have Dumb Drum, which is an oil drum that attacks you. Wow, I lost brain cells from saying that. This boss goes right about how you would expect it would. And lastly, we have the final boss, King K. Rool, who completely breaks the trend of having lackluster bosses in this game, being one of the best bosses in Donkey Kong, but in gaming as a whole. I won't spoil it for you, but King K. Rool is such a good boss that he's worthy of a separate video just about that boss fight. Long story short, all the bosses in this game suck except for King K. Rool. In terms of overall gameplay, how does Donkey Kong Country play out? Do the graphics fit the controls, and does the music make sense aesthetically? I have a short answer and a long answer, and both are yes. Honestly, I wish I had more to say. There's literally no problems with the gameplay other than it can be harder than shit at times, harder than hard-ass monkey shit. But to be honest, I never let the difficulty sully my image of the game, and that's mainly because of one thing, the fairness. Every time I fuck up, I know it's my own fault for being an idiot, not the fact that the game's difficulty comes in cheap ways. All the best video games are like this. Castlevania, Mega Man, Punch-Out!, they're all enjoyable because of how hard they are. But these games are complex enough that their difficulty is a good thing, because it gives an indication not of the game developer's cruelty or unfairness, but what you, the player, could have done better. If you're an idiot like me, you end up dying a lot in this game, but it becomes funny after a while, and only adds to the enjoyment of the game. As if I thought I couldn't like this game more. In a lot of older games, especially ones from the 80s, fleshed out characters weren't really an option for game developers, and they would have to use the game itself to portray character traits. In games such as Dracula's Curse, an example of a game with a larger cast of main characters that play an important role in the story. And hey, they even made a show based around those characters. Was it a good show? No, but let's not get sidetracked about new, poor quality adaptations of classic franchises from the latter half of the 20th century. We'll be here all day. But despite the limitations, Donkey Kong Country developers managed to put together a cast of lovable and memorable characters that fans to this day can remember the dialogue and personalities of. Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong come to mind at first, and their dynamic of young uncle and nephew is really memorable, and really freaking hilarious at times. When Diddy Kong steps on Donkey Kong's foot only for him to punch Diddy in the head, literally knocking him out, this got my whole living room laughing, because it's genuinely funny. Cranky Kong is another character that comes to mind. It's one of the funniest in all of gaming. He's a boomer monkey. It doesn't get much funnier than that. You also get to meet Donkey Kong's girlfriend, Candy Kong, and another memorable character, Funky Kong, fan favorite. All in all, I was pleasantly surprised at how much life and personality this game's characters had, especially for the time period. And some of these characters have more depth than even modern game characters, which only goes to show the quality game devs put into modern games has dropped. But I'm starting to sound like Cranky Kong here, so let's move on. For the sake of time and not sounding redundant, I'm going to put these two together. Essentially, there's 2 sides to every game story. The backstory, or lore, which is presented in a number of ways, but isn't really necessary here, and therefore doesn't show up a whole lot, so I won't bother trying to explain the lore of Donkey Kong Country to you all. Just research the Banana Wars of 1898 to 1934, an actual real-life war that killed millions of people, to get an idea of what kind of shit goes down on Kong Island. The other side of the story is the plot, which in older games more revolves around how the character progresses through the game. Of course, we all know how K. Rool steals all of Donkey Kong's bananas, and how he has to get them back. But there's a lot of cool stuff that you get to explore throughout the game. I'm not going to spoil too much so you can play the game for yourself, but it's really neat to see just how far Kong will go to get his bananas back and rid his home from the Kremlin crew. There's not much to be said here that I haven't already covered in the last section. Like I said earlier, I'm not going to spoil the overall game story for those who haven't beat the game yet, so even if the game is over 25 years old, I'm just going to go ahead and end this portion of the video early, so I have more time to talk about the other stuff. This is one category where DKC does phenomenally, although then again, it's done pretty well in all the categories, except for bosses. So basically, this category is about whether or not the gameplay fits with the story. And in old games, the gameplay was the story, so DK would probably get a win in this category by default, but honestly, it really outdoes itself. Everything I've mentioned before acts as both gameplay and part of the story. For example, the 3 characters you get to meet on the overworld, Cranky Kong, Candy Kong, and Funky Kong. Not only do these characters help you, they all have personalities and help to tell the story. And the levels themselves tell a story as well. Not only in the sense that Donkey Kong progresses through them, but in the sense that you can get to see what occurred on this island prior to Donkey Kong's arrival. The best example of this is Kremkrock Industries. This area of Donkey Kong Island used to be a natural jungle but became polluted and destroyed by the Kremlings and their factories. It helps you learn more about the Kremlings' motives and the fact that they want to industrialize this island for their own purposes. This also helps contribute to the theory that Donkey Kong Country represents the banana wars in Latin America, and that the Kremlings represent the USA's imperialism and industrialism in the Caribbean and Central America, but I'm not going to get into that. The bottom line is, like all categories, Donkey Kong Country ties the gameplay and the story together fantastically. And that's Donkey Kong Country. I'm sure there's more great stuff to say about this game, but that's all for now. Let me know if you agree in the comments, and if you enjoyed the video. Be sure to smash that like button if you want to see more videos like this, and be sure to hit that subscribe button too.